The familiar Western image of Jesus Christ, fair-skinned with long hair and a beard, is deeply ingrained in our cultural consciousness. But where does this specific portrayal originate? A persistent theory suggests it might not stem from historical likelihood, but rather from the likeness of a controversial Renaissance figure, Cesare Borgia. Today, we will critically examine this claim. The theory posits that Cesare Borgia's father, Pope Alexander VI, commissioned prominent artists, sometimes naming Leonardo da Vinci, to model the face of Christ on his son during his papacy, 1492 to 1503. It's sometimes further alleged that earlier depictions, potentially showing a Jesus with more Semitic features, were destroyed to promote this new image. This narrative has circulated for some time, particularly since the 19th century. But does it withstand historical scrutiny? To assess the claim, we must first understand the actual evolution of Christ's iconography. Early Christians, concerned about idolatry, often used symbols rather than direct portraits. The Good Shepherd motif, depicting a youthful beardless figure, was common but symbolic, not intended as a literal likeness. A significant shift occurred around the 4th century AD with the emergence of a mature figure with long hair and a beard. This wasn't arbitrary. Artists drew upon established Greco-Roman visual language, associating features of deities like Zeus or philosophers with Christ to convey authority, divinity, and wisdom. By the 6th century, this image became standardized in the Byzantine Empire, exemplified by the Christ Pantocrator type. Crucially, numerous examples such as the 6th or 7th century icon from St. Catherine's Monastery, Sinai, predate Cesare Borgia by many centuries. This iconographic tradition was well established long before the Borgia era. Now, let's consider Cesare Borgia, circa 1475 to 1507, son of Pope Alexander VI. He resigned his cardinalate to become a highly effective, albeit ruthless, military leader and duke, aiming to establish Borgia control in central Italy. His ambition and methods earned him a prominent, if notorious, place in Renaissance history, observed by figures like Machiavelli. However, his precise appearance is uncertain. Contemporary descriptions vary regarding hair color, dark versus blonde or auburn, and many portraits attributed to him are disputed. Furthermore, historical accounts suggest he may have suffered facial scarring from illness later in his career, contrasting sharply with the idealized depictions of Christ. Evaluating the core claim requires addressing key points. Chronology. The fundamental challenge is timing. The standard long-haired, bearded image of Christ existed and was widely disseminated for over a millennium before Cesare Borgia lived. The iconographic tradition was firmly set centuries prior to the alleged Borgia Commission. Visual comparison. Beyond chronology, a direct visual link is problematic. The uncertainty around Borgia's actual appearance, conflicting descriptions, and disputed portraits make a definitive comparison difficult. Renaissance depictions of Christ generally followed established conventions, often aiming for an idealized beauty rather than a specific portrait. Lack of evidence. There is no historical documentation supporting the claim that Pope Alexander VI commissioned artists to use Cesare as a model for Christ, nor any record of a systematic destruction of earlier images during his papacy. While Leonardo da Vinci worked briefly for Cesare as a military engineer, no credible evidence links him to painting Christ based on Borgia. The popularization of this theory is often traced to the 19th century author Alexandre Dumas, known for historical fiction that sometimes blended fact with embellishment. Why does the myth endure? The notoriety of the Borgia family certainly adds intrigue. The theory also offers a simplistic explanation for the Eurocentric depiction of Jesus, resonating with valid critiques of historical representation, even if the proposed mechanism is incorrect. It also fits patterns common to conspiracy theories involving historical manipulation. In conclusion, the assertion that the conventional Western image of Jesus is based on Cesare Borgia is not supported by historical or art historical evidence. The image developed gradually over centuries through complex theological and cultural processes. The Renaissance saw artists refining this established tradition within their own cultural context, leading to the familiar Europeanized portrayal. However, debunking this specific myth does not negate the important ongoing discussion about representation in religious art. The divergence between the typical Western portrayal and the probable appearance of a first-century Judean man remains a valid subject for historical and theological inquiry. Thank you for joining this examination. We encourage further exploration of art history and critical engagement with popular historical narratives. If you found this analysis informative, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more content exploring historical topics.